to announce and bring out our first speaker. She is the founder and CEO of Happily, a network of over 50,000 event producers, technologists, and creatives who produce world-class virtual and live events. Today, she will be discussing what metrics matter the most when tracking online engagement. At the end of this talk, you'll be able to unlock the ability to understand how much you should be investing in virtual events and be able to work more effectively with internal stakeholders to leverage the opportunity of this exciting new genre of social media. Please welcome to our virtual stage, Sarah Shuey.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks so much, Beth. It's really great to be back on the CMX stage virtually. The last time I was on stage in person for the CMX Summit to talk about event ROI, myth, magic, or major, you can watch that on CMX's YouTube channel. I definitely suggest that because I go more into embarrassingly math calculations during that talk. And this talk I will be touching on a bit of math, but also be diving in a little bit deeper about how our metrics have changed now that we are virtual. So just to quickly level set here. For those of you at home who are wondering, ROI, what is this? When we talk about ROI, we typically are thinking about money. ROI stands for return on investment. And to calculate ROI, you simply divide the amount of profit that you made by the amount of expenses. And so if you made $100, but you only spent $10, you've got a 9x ROI because we took $100, which is your gross profit, and then we subtracted that by $10. And so you come up with a net profit of 90. 90 divided by 10, then you get a 9x ROI. So as a CEO, I really love seeing these numbers. Look, I'll settle for a 4x ROI. I'm always striving for a 20x or plus ROI, but 9x is great. And I just wanted to kind of point out though that over here at Happily, we are not just looking for a return on our money. We want impact with every dollar that we invest into our community. And so today in 2020, when we're living in a global health pandemic, a state of normalized police brutality, the highest levels of unemployment we've ever seen in the events industry, and extreme weather events completely wiping out our homes and towns, making money is simply not enough of a reason for us to produce an event, and we need to start calculating our ROI based on seeing our investment impact. And in this case, I'm using C as a TLA, which is a 3-letter acronym for social, economic, and environmental impact. So again, we're not just looking for a financial return anymore on our virtual events. We're also equally looking out for the sustainable growth of our communities and the people they serve. This is not just something that like a small starry-eyed startup CEO you've probably never heard of is thinking about. Actually today, 27 CEOs of big money organizations like Salesforce, MasterCard came out with a pledge for inclusive capitalism led by, surprisingly, Pope Francis of the Vatican. And he said that today, an economic system that is fair, trustworthy, and capable of addressing the most profound challenges facing humanity and our planet is urgently needed. So if you agree, continue on. We're going to first start with social ROI for virtual events. First of all, in case you didn't get the memo, staying at home saves lives. So here we see a chart of actually how much having stay-at-home mandates will save lives. This is about 2x and this is not even including masks, which will drop it down even further by another 2x below. The red line actually represents the daily deaths in the case of light regulations and no lockdowns or restrictions. So in both cases, you'll see a decline, and that's when there's a vaccine that comes out. So it's still even a slow decline. Furthermore, in-person super spreader Events are really to blame for COVID not settling down, especially in America. And this thing is so contagious. Only 10% of the people have caused 80% of the infections. So when you're calculating the ROI on your virtual event, remember to pat yourselves on the back and count the lives of the people who you saved from COVID. Because it's really, I think, it's really important. And I still am hearing constantly this conversation inside of the events industry about whether or not they can go in person or not. The answer right now is no. Okay, so moving on. We also see that virtual events are opening up greater access to knowledge, and people now have the opportunity to get a better education, and they're also getting more transparency into organizations than they ever were able to before. So case in point, Happily was actually behind the majority of the DNC's daytime programming, their caucus and council meetings. Newsweek reported that the last convention, there was maybe 100 or hundreds of people who were able to participate and see that, and even came in online just seeing that. And this time there was over 100,000 people. That's so huge. I just think about all of the people who were just really disconnected from politics and the policymakers and the people who are really doing the advocacy work and understanding what they're talking about, what they're thinking about, and why they are choosing to vote for and elect a president upcoming. And we're seeing that higher profile speakers and leaders are also jumping in at a higher rate on virtual events than ever before. Even again with the DNC, the Native American Caucus saw Elizabeth Warren come in, Bernie Sanders come in, Mark Ruffalo, Van Jones. This type of participation was something that they were thrilled about because they hadn't seen that before with in-person events. And it's really, again, not just something that we see with the DNC, it's just a really good example of it. We're seeing that across the board with every single virtual event that we're producing. Okay, so now back to the money, to the economic impact of virtual events. How do we measure the ROI there? Well, the good news is now that with virtual events, it's so much easier to measure than it would have been with live events because the technology is really in place to track all of our movements. And if you've seen this slide coming up, give a shout out in the chat because I would love to say hi to you later. That means that you were at that in-person event ROI talk that I gave at CMX. You should watch the video because you can get the inside joke about Tom from MySpace. But Tom TM is the one metric that matters. And in the virtual space, the one metric that matters is duration. Duration is truly the best metric to focus on because time, as we all know, especially now, that's money. Think about TV ads. The price for those is really dependent on how long that those ads are up, and the rate goes up depending on how high the ratings for that show are. The same idea is really going to apply as well to virtual events. Is we're truly experiencing a new emergence of a new genre of media, and the duration is what's critical here. If you're broadcasting to Vimeo or to YouTube, you're going to get great data from those platforms on viewership durations. You can also get those durations in Zoom but only when you require registration. If there is any feature that you can request from your favorite virtual event tech platform providers, it has got to be a detailed look at duration on a per user basis. When you can see those metrics around duration, you're able to determine whether or not your guest and your guests overall, but even the individual guest was participating in the experience. And then you can go and also promote and incentivize super fans or re-engage other people who are not as, and find out, learn feedback, why they were dropping off at certain points, just by having that key metric. We actually have open sourced a virtual event ROI calculator to help you go through all the maths really quick, and then you can figure out how you're going to take that duration number and then turn it into a projected likelihood for conversion to a lifetime customer. So to achieve high duration and therefore a high return on investment, your focus should 100% be on creating a personalized experience for your attendees. The first thing to think about is to build targeted programs. So don't throw a virtual event without really thinking about who is coming and what the main call to action to be. And I would also really encourage you to set like numeral goals at each point in the journey. So that when you figure out what your call to action is, also make sure that you're just like repeating that call to action over and over and over again, because people forget. You really can't like say things like enough times. Trust me on this. When you are like going through this exercise of creating like your user journey, first to start with really thinking through the discovery experience of the event. So now that we're all like very fluidly going from browser to browser and event to event and meeting to meeting, it's really important for you, and also from device to device, right? It's really important for you to think through like what devices are people finding out about this event? What devices would they be on? What's the experience even that they likely are going through before they find out about this event? And create a conversion goal there. You can also start up at the top, of course, of like how many people you want to expose or invite to your event. After that discovery stage, then you're going to move into the registration experience. And a lot of times what we do when we think about the registration experience is that like it's sometimes like a waterfall, right? Like people will maybe like view something or click on an email where you have like posted about the event, but they didn't quite register. So we create scenarios for those folks. So of course, like you're going to have a fast track scenario, but take the time to work through like what happens when they don't do that. With registration, it can usually take for like a larger event, like especially if you are charging for the event, up to 7 points of contact before you'll actually see a conversion. So when you're like, am I like reaching out too many times? If you're doing it more than 10, absolutely. If you're doing it or between 5 to 7, like probably not. You're probably okay. But again, once you put those numbers and those metrics in, you'll be able to just like go through an experiment, like go hard on the first one and then dial it back like on the second one. Every community is different, and it is important for you to know that. And it is also really important for whatever system that you make. If you're making this for the first time, repeat it again the second time and try to change only like one variable, so that you can really get to a point of, after a couple of events, you'll be able to have like a really refined system and a really tight look at like what your ROI can be. So you're actually going to be like more in control of the work that you're doing. After the registration experience, of course, the actual event. And when we do large broadcasts, sometimes we'll do broadcasts where there's like 4 stages happening at once, or even it's just one big show and there's like thousands of people who are coming. Something that we found that's really great to do is to actually have like smaller breakout like viewing party rooms and experiences that are like tailored to specific like audience and persona profiles. That way, the more that you can like actually create and personalize like targeted experiences to those folks, the longer they're going to stay inside of your show. And again, the higher chance that you're going to like win them over as either new or returning customers. Then lastly, before I move on, like on that point of like your during your targeted program for like the actual event, your call to action, don't be shy about like putting your call to action at least 2 or 3 times. Don't plan on just doing it like just once. People like go away, they take breaks, whatever, and they come back. It's really important to just like, again, make sure that you've done all of this work, deliver that call to action as many times as you feel like is necessary. Definitely more than 2. And then lastly, the actual sort of like post experience, make sure that you are make sure that after like the event happens, whether or not they've taken the call to action, you also have like a new waterfall for them that's like ready to go, of like a waterfall of experiences ready to go, so that you can just make it so much easier on you when you go to re-engage your community member. Hopefully this all sounds like really like simple and basic and normal to you, but if you need any support on that, feel free to reach out. And then secondly, I would say like think about your events as like virtual events as a 3-act structure. We're all storytellers here now. And in order to increase the duration of viewership, really taking the time to actually script out, which is something that we do, like write out a full script, of the show. And think through how do we like introduce and open up ideas and important key themes and characters, but then continue to build on those ideas over the show so that you like reach this point of a climactic moment, which is where you're giving the most like strongest appeal for your call to action. And then the last act of your virtual event is going to be on like really like showing and making it visible that like all the community members who are a part of attending have also been a part of this journey with you. So these are all things that that when we see folks who just sort of like throw the kitchen sink and they don't build like a sort of like narrative to it, their durations will go underneath what is kind of standard for like and what is standard for like an hour-long event would be like a 15-minute, like an hour-long broadcast where people are just sort of like watching like passively in a chat where you've got like hundreds or thousands of folks. If you're doing something in a smaller webinar, if your people aren't staying till the very end, you've got a lot of work to do for sure. Because we're usually seeing people are staying like all the way up to like 90% of the time. Okay, and then lastly, reduce those segment times. So what nowadays, like when we do like a 1-hour show, we try to like actually reduce the talk time to like a minute and a half, or 3 minutes. If we've got like multiple people, we're just trying to like, when we're doing like a conference, we try to just like pack it all into like one show, because people just get really like tuned out. If you haven't already tuned out from like even me talking, like, wow, give me your secrets on focus, because it's just so hard for people these days to really like stay with you and engaged and with your speakers, especially if they're, and most of our speakers are not, properly media trained. So that would be that. Okay, and then lastly, on the whole point of like the money part and the economics, you should probably employ really 2 different virtual event campaign strategies, whether or not you're converting a new customer or a returning customer. And I would say like generally those smaller webinar, smaller meetings, smaller activities and experiences are best when you're trying to like upsell or retain a customer. Whereas for those where you're those kind of campaigns where you're trying to just like build awareness and bring in new people, those ones are going to be really important that you actually like have a totally different campaign that's like much more focused around like big brand and splash and like having like lots of focus, because new people are typically like more impressed by seeing that there's a lot of engagement and there's so many people that like you've already validated for them that you're cool. So if you're not doing like a show, or you don't think that you have this reach for like thousands of viewers, do make sure that you bring in like and spend the time and maybe even the money there. You'll get a good ROI if you have someone who is like notable within the space. So, and when you're looking at like actually like a new customer, the way that you're going to calculate your ROI versus calculating on an upsell is going to be a little bit different. Because when you're looking at a new customer, you're actually going to be, calculating based on their lifetime value. Because when you are bringing a new community, a new prospective community member into your event, you're really changing like their lifestyle or their habit. So the problem with like the way that most, I think most events in the past have been calculated on ROI is that they're really sort of like measured by like, was there a sale like right after the show? If you're a new person, like you're just kind of learning, right? Like about the experience. But if you were able able to convert someone that was new, you basically have to imagine that you are like grabbing them for that lifetime value versus like just that first sort of small product sale. It's the sales team's job to basically win them over up into like this, like into achieving that LTV or even increasing what the average LTV is. But it's your job to sort of open up that door and get them through. And I say this just because like it's really important to measure it in this way, because a lot of times if you don't and you're just measuring on the first product, your CEO, your CFO, your marketing person, like they might not let you continue to like build a great event even though you knew it was so awesome and it was like life changing. So speaking the same language as the CFO and the CEO and their investors essentially will allow you to and unlock you in a way to be able to defend for larger budgets. Last and certainly not least, in fact, it's really been like the defining point, I think, of like the point of impact that I've been like striving for within like my career as an event person, and that's the environmental impact of a virtual event. Live events is like the second largest producer of waste. And so actually with virtual events, it's kind of amazing that we can actually reduce our carbon emissions by more than 97% than what a live event was. And I learned about this through our friend Trent Wolby, who's the sustainability lead over at Google, and he spoke at a TEDx like Happily event that we did that was all around the Countdown program and sustainability. And I have to say that like that was such an eye opener to me, because once we realized that that going virtual simply like just reduces the carbon by 97%, and it's a lot because most of that carbon is coming from travel and people flying in from all over the place. But what happened was it made it possible for even the smaller like production companies and smaller companies and organizers to be able to take their events and not just reduce them to 97%, but we've like actually made a partnership with a reforestation company, and now all of our events are carbon zero, which is absolutely incredible. And I think I'm gonna just sort of like close out a little bit there by showing you a video, a quick video of the TEDx Happily experience that we had and how we sort of think about sustainability and how virtual events can play a role in increasing your ROI.
This is the decisive decade in the history of humankind.
We are all changing the world through the things that we create, whether it's rockets and robots, or if it's experiences and communities that we build that help shape culture and society.
Climate change is not a single crisis. It's an interconnected crisis.
Yet somehow we've become more disconnected from nature.
We've learned that we can get about a 97% emissions reduction if we go virtual for our events.
All of our virtual events are carbon zero. Whenever you work with Happily, you can know that you have a carbon zero event.
Solidarity is power with, not power over.
Let's continue to lean on each other, continue to believe in each other.
I'd love to invite you all to also calculate your carbon emissions. We made it really easy for you to do so through our calculator at happily.io/calculator, I think. That makes it really easy to see how much CO2 you can save. And also, again, remember, by simply going virtual, like you've already made such a difference. And it's great to just be able to see that. So good luck with everything. See you around.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We do have some time for some questions, and there were a couple of questions that popped up in the chat while you were presenting. That was fantastic. I feel like that was kind of a good fresh look on ROI, talking about what's changed and stuff in the virtual event world. And I would like to know first, you have seen all kinds of virtual events, all kinds of goals and values behind those events, but I'd like to know, were you surprised by anything this year about the world of virtual events or what you saw in it?
Yeah, I think like I'm always surprised actually, just because surprised by the vulnerability. Not that like I didn't know that that was going to happen, but by just like how much like guests have really leaned into being vulnerable and sharing like so quickly with each other, and that's been surprising in such a good way.
That's awesome. Well, I hope that I can share more stories that are that like heartwarming, the teams working together, coming together to work on virtual events. Okay, so some audience questions. We had a question from Carlina who asked, with so many events going virtual and digital fatigue, how can you showcase why your event is needed and will make an impact?
Yeah, I think that like a lot of people aren't actually doing video advertisements for their events, and it's a really big missed opportunity. You now all have video production skills, and so making a teaser video to show what your event is going to be like, or show the people, or even like honestly show like what happened in past events, like that is going to make it a lot easier for folks who are so tired of reading these long emails and like, pressing a button that says learn more and they don't know where that goes to. So like make a short clip, do it 15 seconds, 30 seconds, doesn't have to be long, but that will really help lift your engagement.
Great advice. Now, I don't know if you're allowed to answer this next one. So give us anything you want. But Emma asked, what platforms would you recommend for over 10,000 participants?
I mean, what we are doing is what we do at Happily is we're even now, so we're producing this. We have this system, and even with the DNC, we use Zoom as an ingest point. And then we have streaming engineers that will then do a video mix with like all the branded layers that you see right here and right now. And then we can push that out to any platform. So we're pretty platform agnostic, at least for us on the production side. So you can send it to Bevy, you can send it to YouTube, you can send it to Vimeo. You can send it to all of those at the same time, which is a lot of times what we will do. And we might even be sending like simultaneously to an unlisted YouTube just for archival purposes or as a fail-safe plan. So I would say like always, if you're at that 10,000 mark, make sure that you're always also putting it on your social media channel, because that's generally pretty stable.
Awesome. This one I like. Teresa asked, I love your glasses. Where are they from? And also, what is the best practice for fashion at virtual events? I think that's a great question.
Well, I also want to ask the same question. I was like, I want to ask the same question for where you got your glasses from too. I got mine at LA Eyeworks. They're amazing. Highly recommend. You can buy online. But Beth, where did you get yours from?
I actually don't know the brand. Spectacle Eyeworks.
Ew, I'm gonna like write that down so I can look. I love that color. Fashion for well, so I mean, like, look, I've been working remote for like a really long time, like over 10 years. So I'm like been used to this virtual world, and like I remember when like everything hit, like people were like, "Oh, I'm in pajamas," and like I was like in makeup and ready to go, because like I don't know, just dress like you're going to work. That's what I think. If you're going to work, go to work. When when I'm going to a party, I wear a cocktail dress. Like there's something about just being in the part and wearing the clothes that like makes you feel better and makes you feel like you're a part of the whole experience.
Good advice, Sarah. I'm wearing jeans to make it feel like I'm working. Thank you so much again, Sarah. It's always such a pleasure to have you on our stage.
Thanks for having me.